Hey Dheeraj, thank you. Thanks for taking the time to join and share with our listeners your thoughts around company building, developing customers and markets, and teams and products.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity, Raj.
Absolutely. So I guess you don't need much introduction. I want to keep the time to really dig into your brain, I guess, to get your thoughts around these areas that we talked about. So just briefly for the benefit of the listeners, obviously you founder and former CEO of Nutanix, and now founder of DevRev, where you're doing it again all over from scratch. So I think I'd keep it brief. There's enough they could go and read up about to know more about you. So with that, we can get started on the areas that we wanted to talk about. But before that, anything else you want to add about yourself? I know, as I said, those pieces do cover, and there's a lot more that we can talk about you. But anything that you want to quickly share about?
The fact that we live here in California, in Northern California. My wife and 3 kids, and we are equally deep into philanthropy and also into investing. So we have a family office with a team of people who actually manage the family office with our chief investment officer. And our philanthropy is called Paramhansa Philanthropies. And we are focused quite a bit on biotech, life sciences, and this area which is the cusp of biology and computing. So it's really trying to be a fly on the wall when it comes to computational oncology and how do you use computing to really solve some hard problems in the field of cancer.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that additional information about you and your family's involvement in those areas. Thank you. Thanks, Dheeraj. So I guess we can get started with the first piece around company building. I think I've done a bunch of research on your talks around this topic. People usually think of company building as building products and selling it and all of that. I think you have a different way of thinking about what company building is. So if you can share your thoughts and just the framework to use about thinking around company building, right? How do you think about that, the whole aspect of company building at a macro level?
At the core of company building is really building relationships with people, whether it's end users or buyers or customers, employees, partners. It's really about building relationships because people buy from people, and people ask for other people for help and so on. So I really look at this as you build relationships and then business comes. And the word that we use for this is brand. So how do you really think of your values and how do people remember you? So in my last company, we did a lot of work. It was hardcore tech stuff. It was building hybrid clouds and infrastructure software and shipping it to a ton of customers and helping them build infrastructure which looks very similar to consumer cloud or public cloud data centers. And it was a lot of fun. But along the way, what we really built was the brand of Nutanix, which was about Apple-like delight when it came to infrastructure, or AWS-like convergence when it came to infrastructure on-prem. And I think that's what people really connected with the most. So many people think of company, they confuse it for product, and many people confuse a product for a feature. And I think they all just stack up. You start with the core kernel of the idea is really the product, but how the product really connects with people and end users. And also connects the end users to the makers, the developers, the product managers, the support people. All that stuff is the marketers, the salespeople, all of that stuff really is at the core of company building, connecting people to people, and really establishing a brand, and having that core belief about values, like what really matters, is company building.
Got it. Got it. Thank you. Thanks, Dheeraj. The next piece around taking it forward. As you said, it starts with the core of an idea, and then taking it out, to the market. So maybe we can start around your thoughts, the frameworks that you use to think about developing customers and markets, right? So maybe start off with understanding customer problems and needs. Maybe that's something that we could start off with, or however you want to sort of approach this. I know you're heavily into PLG. At Nutanix, it was you call it SLG, and then now DevRev, it's PLG. So yeah, there's different frameworks to think about developing customers and markets. One of the things when I talk with some of my guests on the podcast is use Steve Blank's customer development model as a way to talk about it, but which is around customer discovery, customer validation, and customer creation. We could sort of go along those, or if you have a different way of how you think about or the frameworks you use to think about developing customers and markets, would love to hear your thoughts there.
I think there's some good product management frameworks out there. I believe they all say similar things, and Steve Blank started a lot of this stuff 20, 25 years ago. But at the core of all of this, as you use the word discovery, is it starts out with trying to find the underserved market. But even before that is your passion. What are you passionate about? Because if you don't have that passion, you can always have acquired taste later on. And it's not the passion for the problem, it's the passion for your skill. What's your competitive advantage? What's your core competitive advantage? And I think you've seen this with entrepreneurs, they do one company, they do the next one, but they take some core skills along with them. They take their passion along with them. Like for me, it is the passion to really think about design and reduce friction, not just between the computer and the human, but also between people. There's some huge amounts of friction between the computer and the human, which people try to solve with product design, interaction design. But there's a lot of friction, between departments as well, between customers and providers. There's huge amounts of friction. And if you can really relate to that friction and keep working every day towards that is the core of an entrepreneur, and that's where you begin. Then you say, okay, where do I apply this passion, this conviction, this skill? And that's when you start thinking about an underserved market, and you pick a market that could be underserved because of two reasons: either because the end user are not very happy, and there's a sort of a monopoly. There's a lot of mundaneness in that business, which nobody wants to go and resolve. Go back to Atlassian Jira, 20 years ago when they started doing project management and trying to solve problems for software engineering. It was a boring market. Nobody wanted to get into it. So they spent 10 years just trying to make it way simpler, way easier, way cheaper than what the incumbency actually had. And then they built such a big moat around it that they created a community where people would talk about their query language, their analytics, their dashboards, their reporting, their automation. All those things came over time. But the core idea was there's an underserved market, nobody's serving it. It's probably too boring for somebody to come and make money. And anyway, who has made money with developers? And they came and completely shattered that myth over the course of that decade in between 2002 and 2012. So you got to pick that space that you believe is underserved. And then the question is, what's the sort of core thesis you begin with? It could also be underserved because of go-to-market and distribution, that it's too expensive, or it's too lumpy, or you have to commit to $1 million to $2 to $3 to $5 million up front. and you can bring it to tens of dollars or hundreds of dollars, and price it by the seat, by the month. I mean, what Amazon did with AWS was really miniaturized infrastructure. I mean, it's not like people didn't know how to run virtual machines or use storage or configure networks or secure their perimeter. A lot of these things existed, but the way Amazon did it was by miniaturizing the whole experience. And the commerce behind it was mind-bogglingly different. It was like e-commerce. It was like retail. You know, they were able to stream infrastructure from the web. So distribution can also be another big underserved space that people have to look at, not just products and features and capabilities and use cases, but the way you sell it, the way people consume it can be equally disruptive. So, given these two things, I mean, one is product and features and interactions and workflows and automations and analytics, and the other one is distribution, which is really around commerce and access and distribution. I think those are the things that you look at and say which one will you focus on. Now, I look at it as two sides of the same coin. You have to be great with content, which is product, but you also have to think very hard about distribution. I mean, there were companies in Hollywood building movies and creating movies. Every year there were tens of movies coming out from big studios. But what Netflix did was really disrupt distribution, and finally they went on to also produce content. So I think as entrepreneurs, people who are building companies, they have to really think about the yin and yang between content and distribution, and think really hard about both of these, not just one or the other.
Got it. Thank you. Thanks, Dheeraj. That's really a good framework to use. To think about the aspect of developing customers and
Yeah,
markets.
and there's also, I mean, when you talk about developing customers and markets, the next phase of this is really trying to look for those 2% people who are innovators, because you can try to look for everybody and try to be all things to all people, but that 2% is out there, and they are the vocal ones. They're the ones who feel like nobody listens to them. They're sort of the dark sheep in the customer base, and they're looking for something innovative. They're looking for something creative, because if you go and talk to the other 80-90% of the people who are not innovators or early adopters, you'll probably get an answer that's full of I don't think the market needs it, or there's something that's similar, or those other incumbents actually have the same features. It really gets into the bells and whistles of a discussion rather than the underlying piece, which is what floats below the stream of consciousness, below the threshold of consciousness, which could be around ease of use, or be around, or this is a top-down decision. The grassroots doesn't like it, even though the managers and the VPs might like this too, but in reality, it doesn't work. So you got to go deeper under the threshold of consciousness to really understand not just the pain points, because pain points is just one part of it. There's desires and there's needs. So we all understand needs. Needs is going to be features, more workflows, more requirements that people currently have, which is like, if you want me to move out of my current tool, then you need to take care of my needs. But unearth the pain points, but finally their desires that they don't know of. I mean, when it came to Apple, I don't think anybody said I have a pain point around lack of convergence. The fact that I have 20, 25, 30 devices that I have to carry or leave on my desk, and the fact that they're not in my pocket. Somebody had to unearth that desire to say, look, what if I digitized everything, miniaturized everything, and made them all part of an operating system called iOS? That is an equally important piece of the puzzle as well, which can only come from this conviction, this passion that I spoke of within, where you're trying to take some ideas from other realms of life and applying it to your realm.
Got it. Thank you. Thanks, Dheeraj. That's excellent way to think through the whole process. I guess the next piece of it, in terms of once you have that idea, taking it forward, in terms of building the team and the product to go after it, right? So I guess that's the piece that we want to talk about in terms of how do you go about that process of building the team and the product. So just if we can start with your thoughts around how do we think about maybe first starting with building the team. You've talked extensively about culture, those five H's that you use as a framework, but maybe beyond that, how do you use or how do you use that as a framework to think about how do you go and start building your team to take this forward?
Yeah, I mean, it's there's no hard and fast framework. At some level, you need to think of tools and systems and values and cultural principles. But at the core of all of this is very similar to what I said about customers and users. The people who are underserved. So, what do I mean by people who are underserved? These are employees who are not being served properly in their larger companies where they currently have a job. And they are impatient. They are rebels. They are folks who want to make a difference and have an impact. And they just can't move fast enough in what they do. And they're also looking for a cleaner canvas because the current canvas is too um, is too busy, it's too cluttered, it's too bureaucratic, this extremely bureaucratic. All that stuff comes up for these underserved people, and that's what you really go and leverage. Obviously you have to go and sell a dream to them because nothing exists more than the idea or the concept, and to take that nothingness, that state of nothingness, to something that people can touch and feel requires people who have the courage to be visual people as well. So, I think entrepreneurs are very visual people. The way they actually empathize with the underserved user is by thinking visually. And of course, they write it down and they communicate in other ways too. But you're looking for people who can then think visually, because you really have to take this very nebulous idea and create this imagined construct. It's like religion, it's like nationhood, or it's like one of those things that doesn't really exist but needs to be an imagined construct. And you build this tribe of people who are basically working towards that mission, that startup nation that you're trying to build, that religion that you're trying to create, is really creating something out of nothing. So many of these people, you got to go find them, especially in the early days. It's actually developers and designers. Uh, and if you're lucky, you'll find one or two good product managers who can gel well in this trifecta of a developer, designer, and a PM. But initially, I think the founders have to be the PMs. They need to do a lot in terms of not just customer, development, but also thinking about the market, knowing how to connect the dots in the existing world. It's really hard to delegate product management early on to anybody but yourself. But over time, in the course of the next 6 to 12 months of the company, you'll want to find one such person who is like an extension of the founder, who will go and respect design, who will go and respect developers and their engineering difficulties that they face, can empathize with those things, but also be very good with customers, selling a dream and coming back and finally executing on this vision. Because many a time there's a lot of conversations that happen, and you can talk about frameworks galore, but at the end of the day, coming back and executing on it, working on it, is painful. I mean, one of the biggest reasons for DevRev, the company that we're doing right now, is that there's too much English being conversed in these discovery calls and these early meetings that people are having. But eventually, the developers have very little clue of why should they be prioritizing a few things certain way. It's still very feature centric sprint plannings and project centric sprint plannings, and there's nothing about the product, which is a very structured way of thinking about what you're building. and there's nothing about end users and customers. So to bring these two elements, and make them the epicenter of all things business development, startup development, is really, really important. Because now where the rubber meets the road, it's about understanding the trends and the patterns and knowing the anomalies and being able to prioritize these things and allocate it to people and just scrum the heck out of it. You need to really do this every week, every sprint, every quarter. How do you know that the things you're working on are relevant? And I think that's an equally important piece of the puzzle is the process, and the way you communicate with end users and the way you get the communications back and really have a call to action for those things. So people, process, and finally, obviously, the design of the product, the differentiation that you bring in terms of reducing friction between the computer and the human.
Got it. Thank you. Thanks, Dheeraj. Yeah, definitely. That was, in terms of the team aspect, as you said, the culture is key, but also, being able to take it to the next level, working together and collaborating, is absolutely super critical.
And by the way, it's easier said than done, Raj. I mean, the idea of embracing a designer early on or two, and then having a design culture, you can't retrofit it. You can't just go and act it. You have to live it. The way you recruit them, these people who are not engineers, they're not developers, they're probably outsiders. How do you embrace them and make them feel whole? And how do you convert their English questions? Because the way they'll ask questions is going to be less technical than the way your developers think of it, or even your PMs think of it, or even as founders you think of it if you're a technical founder. So being able to really embrace design early on and think hard about design, and not just the graphical UI and the user experience of a no-code app, but also a low-code solution. Thinking hard about the design of APIs, avoiding any leakage of abstraction, understanding separation of concerns in APIs and the API stack, thinking hard about being the messenger of events when it comes to webhooks. Many of these things is all about design. So creating the design culture is easier said than done.
Yep, cool. Thank you. Thanks again, Dheeraj, for sort of sharing your thoughts around the company building and the aspect of building teams and products. Appreciate you taking the time over a weekend to come and share with our listeners your thoughts around these aspects. Thanks once again.
Thank you.